This is Mastercaster, taking you from zero to podcasting hero. And now here is your host, Neil Butler.
In the past couple of episodes, we've discussed the recording of your raw podcast audio. You'll now have either a WAV, M4A or MP3 file which you need to tidy up before saving it as an MP3 file for distribution. Firstly, let's spend a moment understanding the different file types you might have. I won't spend a lot of time on this. There are plenty of expert websites that outline the various file types and their technical characteristics. This section will just help us to know the difference between the file types as we move through the editing process. The first file type is the WAV file, a file that will have WAV as its file name extension. This is the highest quality recording format available for digital recording. That is, the file contains the closest possible mathematical representation of the original recorded sound possible. It's also described as lossless, meaning that when it's saved, the file keeps all of the digital data within the file. As a result, the WAV file also takes up the most disk space of these three formats. The second one is the M4A format, identified by having M4A as its file name extension. The M4A format was introduced by Apple as part of the development of their iTunes product. While the M4A format is now much more widely accepted than it used to be, there is still not universal acceptance of this format. The M4A is described as a compressed, lossy format, which means the audio quality is not as good as the WAV file, although still very good for most applications, but does have the advantage of being a smaller file size than the equivalent WAV file. Finally, the MP3 is also a compressed lossy format, much like the M4A file we just discussed. The massive advantage that the MP3 format has is that whilst it operates in much the same way as an M4A, it is the most universally accepted audio format, which means that it is ideal for podcasting. Audio quality that is certainly good enough for podcasting, file sizes that are small, which means taking up less space on your mobile device, and universally accepted as an audio file format, these are three great reasons why most podcast stores require you to convert your final podcast episode to MP3 before uploading it. So given that you have the raw audio saved in WAV, M4A, or MP3 format, you can now import that file into your selected editing software, for example, Audacity or Adobe Audition. You might sometimes hear these packages called your digital audio workstations, or DAWs. We won't be using this Mastercaster episode to explain how digital audio workstations operate. There are many tutorials available for whichever package you choose. I'd recommend you work through one of those before you get too far into your podcast journey. Once you've imported your raw audio into your DAW, you'll be able to do a number of things with that file: increase or decrease the volume of the audio, cut sections of the raw audio out, for example where there's a long unintended pause, add intros and outros, etc. If you've recorded the raw audio as multi-track, you'll be able to undertake these steps for one, some, or all tracks. If you only have one single file containing the mixed audio, you'll only be able to do these steps across the entire mixed file. You'll also be able to add intros, outros, and other breaks into your podcast episode. Most podcasters create intro and outro files which consist of a short piece of royalty-free music, maybe 10 to 15 seconds for the intro and up to 30 seconds for the outro, with a voiceover introducing the episode and providing details of websites, social media channels, and the like as part of the outro. Again, rather than explaining how to create and insert these additional sections into your podcast file in this series, I'd recommend that you complete one of the many available tutorials about your chosen editing software before going too much further. Once you've completed your editing and you have a file that contains the final audio, you'll need to save or export the file. The function will depend on which software you're using. This is where you need to make sure that you're using the correct output format. You can choose to save the audio as a WAV file if you want to. This will ensure that you keep the highest quality audio available should you need to re-edit it later on. Keep in mind though that this is the highest quality and therefore biggest file size. If you're limited for storage space, this is probably a luxury you don't really need. The important format is MP3. This is the format you will require to upload your podcast to a hosting platform. When you're saving or exporting your MP3 file, you'll be asked to nominate a bitrate. In layman's terms, This is a measure of the sound quality. The higher the bitrate you use, the better the audio quality and the larger the file size will be for a given sound file. Many software packages offer preset bitrate values when you are exporting or saving MP3 files. For example, in Adobe Audition, there are a range of bitrate values between 8 and 320 kbps or kilobits per second. It's entirely up to you to select an appropriate bitrate. That said, I wouldn't go below 128, which will give you a sound quality similar to the radio, and there's little value going above 192, given that people will be more likely to be listening on their mobile device than through a high-fidelity sound system. I usually save my podcast episodes as MP3 files at 192 kbps. Once you've saved the MP3 file, you have everything you need to publish your podcast episode. In our next episode, we'll be talking about the need for a podcast hosting platform and how to select one for your podcast.
This has been another episode of Mastercaster. For more information about Mastercaster or the other services provided by Untypical Media, please visit www.mastercaster.co or follow Mastercaster on Facebook and LinkedIn.